And we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Draftbit office hours. So this is our Thursday office hour. We have two office hours every week now, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday. And I might be joined by the special guest today, who is Alan, I'm going to invite him right now, one of our software engineer in our team. So we'll see. I invited him. He might be joining in a few minutes. For those who are not familiar, I'm going to pour myself a little coffee while we discuss. I apologize. I'm making it more and more casual every week, but I do need the caffeine. So for those of you guys who haven't been to an office hour before, what we typically do is we invite everybody, Draftbit user or not, to come and ask us questions about Draftbit, about anything really. We prefer to answer questions about Draftbit, but if you want to know code or just the market, the industry, stuff like that, that's also what you're also welcome to do so. And the process is typically, if you have any question, win Crowdcast right now, so you should see a little ask a question button. So click on that, ask a question. You can use the chat to say hi and introduce yourself, say where you're coming from and all that. But ideally, your question go into that ask a question. It just makes it easier for us to make sure we're not missing any question. So if you really want a question to get answered, feel free, please use that ask a question. Okay, and in the absence of questions, when people don't have any question in the live audience, what we do is we go to our community.draftbit.com website, which is kind of the place where people go and ask their question outside of office hours. So we go through that and we look at the list and we try to take them one by one and answer a question. Hopefully we can answer everything that we see in there. If not, we at least give you pointers to what to do. I see Alan is connected. Hopefully he's going to be there soon. Hey.
Hello.
How you doing, Alan?
I'm doing great.
Good. Good. I was just telling everybody a little bit about you earlier. So you're one of our senior software engineers on the team. And so I'm excited to see you in office hour. And hopefully together we can answer some questions.
Excited to be here.
Yeah. So I see one question already. We're going to give people a minute to ask more questions. And like I said, after we answer the question in the Crowdcast live event, we're going to go to the community.draftbit.com to answer the question before we posted there. All right, let's get started. I see a bunch of people. If you want also, just for fun, let us know where you joining us from. That'd be cool. I see Brian Smith, John Galt. Let us know a little bit about yourself. That'll be fun. Brian's from California. Nice and early over there. All right. First question. Let's get started. So, you ready, Alan? You ready for that first question?
I hope so.
All right. I'm trying to figure out how to pass metadata when submitting a form. For example, capture the current date and add that date to the record. No luck so far. By the way, Alan, I don't know. Can you see the question? Do you see the ask a question widget at the bottom?
Okay. Yes, I do. I do see it.
You see the question I just read?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sweet. So, how to pass metadata when submitting a form, like the date. I've got an answer for that. Do you want to take a stab at it, or do you want me to get started?
Well, so just to clarify here, are we talking about setting a field on an API request action that's being made? And the issue is, how do we get the current date?
So Brian says yes, although I feel like, Brian, can you clarify? My understanding from your question was that it's not necessarily inputs that you have in the screen, but maybe extra information like the date. Do you want the date to be a field? No, an input. Okay, so you're right, Aaron. Brian is confirming that in the chat. So yeah. it is an input.
Cool. Well, so as far as getting the current date, this is something that I mean, it would be nice if we had a primitive for it. But we the easiest way to do that, right? Unless somebody added something that I don't remember, is to just have a custom function which returns a new date, and then you can pass in a you can have a field on your so. Backing up a second, when you create your API endpoint, you define a certain set of fields on that you're able to pass to that endpoint when you make your request in the body of the request. So that's step one, is make sure that you have a field in that body for like current date or something like that. And then when you want to pass that information in, when you actually make your request, you'll be given an option of for that field, like let's say it's called date, you'll see an option for date when you make your action, and you can select you can select a value to put in there. We don't currently have a value for current date, but what you can do is you can choose a you can enter in like any value, like a null or an empty string or whatever, and then transform it with a function and choose a function which returns back a current date.
And can I interrupt you for a sec?
Absolutely.
Could we do that? Could we show it live? We like to kind of demonstrate with like sharing screen during the office hour, and I'm happy to do it too. Either way, whatever works.
Well, if you have a sort of bootstrapped app, then maybe that would be better than me trying to set something up from scratch.
I don't have Bootstrap, but I think I can do it pretty quick. Let me
sure.
give that a shot.
Well, let's talk through it, but
okay.
Yeah, maybe I can consult.
Screen window. All right. I'm gonna move that here. All right. I'm assuming everybody can see my screen. So I'm going to use the example there. So like Adam said, first thing you're going to need is, well, essentially, I'm assuming you're going to want like a text and a button, right? You want to submit something. I'm going to rush through it a little bit, but so submit date, for example. Submit. Now here, when you click the button, you can make an API request. Now we don't have any service or endpoint set up yet, so we're gonna have to go and set one up. And for that, I'm going to just use a fake backend that we have set up for you guys to use to mark your interaction. And it's this example-data.draftbit.com. And I'm going to do one endpoint for that. You see, if you go there, we have multiple endpoints. I'm wondering if I can, is there one you think with a date? Oh yeah, date of birth. That might work, right? If I try to create one of those.
Sure. Yeah.
All right, let's give that a try. Over here. Okay, so author. I'm going to make a post. Okay, and the body. All I care about is sending. What I'm going to do.
Maybe just copy all of those and replace one of them.
Exactly.
In case they're required.
I think from having used example data before, you don't have to provide all of them. I think it's pretty forgiving.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you can even just do like this, and it should be working.
That works for me.
All right, let's give it a try. Person. I'm just gonna do name, and date. All right. So now I have my endpoint with two
right, and just for the people who are seeing this for the first time, the format of that body structure is JSON, any JSON, but with one sort of extra piece of syntax, which is that double curly brace syntax that you can see. And all of the things which appear in double curly braces become variables, which then you can later on put your own custom data into when you actually invoke the request.
Great clarification. Okay, so now I added something to my backend manually, like a fake data, but we're sending it essentially a person, name, and a date of birth. So now I'm going to save that. So now I have that endpoint that I can call here. It's example data, it's the author endpoint. And now the name, I'm going to use the text input. This is the text input value for the component I just added. So that's the name we're going to send. And then date, that's what you were saying, and then right, like I can do something completely like fake for now. Ooh. How would I go about having something random that I can transform?
Right. So the it's weird that it didn't let you set that variable.
Maybe I did it wrong, or maybe it's because null is. What if I do like
try like 1 or something? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Something weird about null. That's maybe a bug. So if you go into your custom functions,
and before I go there, just because we in this context, what we're gonna do is like this is useless data, but we're gonna run it through a custom function, right? And so that's why you're saying like now I go to my custom function to add a new one.
Yes, that's right. So this is a bit of a hack, but it's something that we might improve on this later. But you can call custom functions, but you have to start with some kind of input to the custom function and transform it. Even though in the example we're creating here, you're not actually transforming anything. We're just passing in kind of data that we're going to ignore. But that's the way that we do it at this stage.
And what I will do in that custom function, correct me if I'm wrong, is just send whatever, it's receiving whatever parameter, but we don't care about it. I'm not going to use the foo in this case. And I'm just going to create a new JavaScript date for the now date. Is it toString? What's the syntax?
I think toString will work just fine. That'll return an ISO formatted string.
Okay. All right. So let's give that a try. This is essentially it, right?
Yep.
All right. That's my now date. So here now it's in my list, my custom function. I can add that here. Now I kind of want to. So that should work. But how am I gonna demonstrate it? Maybe. Oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put the response I'm getting. If you remember when I set up the endpoint, I'm getting the object back. So I can maybe put the response in like a global variable and just show it on the screen. Would that be good?
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm going to create a global variable. Okay. I'm going to create response. I don't know why I'm caring about the name. It really doesn't matter. But example.
Perfection.
Data response. I guess that example data response. And there's nothing in there. I don't care about that for now. And I'm going to just put a text component and show that variable. I'm going to map that variable to this. So it doesn't show anything because I don't have any default. Actually, maybe it would be good to put a default so people can see it being displayed. So now it shows there. But what I want to do is when I click submit, the response of that call I can save. There's this result name. So example data response. Ooh, maybe now is a good time. I need to do a little side note on. We used to have to take that response and pass the JSON out of it, but we don't do that anymore. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
That's right. Yeah. So in the beginning, we were just using Node or JavaScript fetch. JavaScript fetch returns an object which is kind of the represents the response of the API, but before it's been parsed or before it's been validated or anything. And what we've changed is we've kind of simplified that by adding automatically going one step further when we make the request, and not just getting the request back, but getting it back and parsing JSON out of it. So the quick version of this is that now when you make a request, that what you get as a response from that request is the JSON object that the API returns, rather than something that you have to do an additional step to unpack. So for anybody who previously had to add a parse JSON action to unpack their request, you don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, thanks for that. All right, so I'm wondering if I'm going to have to extract here, or if I can just set directly the global variable. I'm going to try that. I think, yeah, I can, right? Because
you can, but you will get a red screen when it tries to render it because it's no longer a string, it's an object. So you can get around that though by stringifying, JSON stringifying in your text component.
Got it. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm setting that global variable to the response. And then when I'm about to display it, like Alan said, I'm going to transform that JSON object into a string, to string. Oh, is it?
Should JSON stringify. That's your best bet there. Down.
Oh, yeah. There
you go.
Can you remind me when I would use the parse JSON string, the JSON stringify, and the toString?
Sure thing. So parse JSON string is a transformation you can use if you know you have a string formatted in JSON and you want to translate it into an object. JSON stringify goes the other direction, something which is some kind of object that you want to put into a string. ToString is the kind of built-in JavaScript ToString operator, which is useful for example, stringifying a date. Not so useful for stringifying an object because you'll just get back a string like, square brackets object.
Yeah.
Not particularly useful, but it has uses in some cases.
Okay, so let's give that a try. I'm going to preview it. I feel like we're in a cooking show. I'm like, Alan, would you tell us a little bit more about that recipe?
Exactly.
Feels good.
Here we have Mediterranean oranges.
All right, so the name is going to be Jendo. I'm going to submit. All right, and so I'm getting back the gender object I just created with the date of birth that is mapped exactly to my local time, which is 12:21, because it's EST. I'm on the East Coast. So that worked. And we have added that to our backend. That's it. So that's how you not only pass something to a backend that you have on the screen, but also pass maybe like metadata that you don't even quite need an input from, like the date we just did. I think we answered the question.
That's right. Anything we can further add to that, Brian, or does that answer your question?
I think that's it. It says. All right, sweet.
Perfect.
Excellent. All right, moving on to, so I'm done and saying, I'm going to click that here. Okay. Next question from John. Okay, I'm going to click start answering. Okay. Why don't you have simple apps with a working authentication flow for popular backend providers like Firestore, Xano, and Superbase? All the users will need to do is put their personal API settings in the app globals for this to work. In my opinion, getting developers up and running quickly is essential for your potential growth. Personally, I've spent days on trying to configure various authentication provider instead of spending this time developing my actual app. Many other developers would give up. So I have an answer for that. And Alan, you feel free to add anything after. But so the way, first of all, it's a great idea and something we've been talking about. To give you more specific, I know Peter, our CTO, also have done some work around trying to figure out, like, can we even abstract that even one level further and have like a navigator that is a logging navigator and logout navigator. So you will still create your endpoint, but you will essentially not have to care about like moving people from logging or logged out manually, and it will be done a little bit more automatically for you. So we're putting some thought into it. It's a good feature. It's a good idea. Thanks for bringing that up. The reason we haven't done it yet, it's A, because we have limited resources. That's going to be the answer for most things, but also because we've observed it's always a balance between if you load a new app in Draftbit and we already do a bunch of stuff for you, you are technically further along, but it's tricky in some context for people to understand what we did for them. And so even though, like, at first glance they might be further along because now they have authentication, but if we don't do it in a way that teach them how to do it and so they understand what's going on, then they might get blocked, if as soon as they want to tweak something or try to like get out of the path we've created for them, they're not more knowledgeable. So that's something we can address by just doing it better and having more explanation and a slightly different UX to explain those concepts. But in the absence of that, we're a little we try to go into it carefully when we do stuff for the user to help them out, particularly when it's not necessarily clear for the user what we've done for them. I hope that answers the question a little bit. Alan, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I think you said it pretty well. I mean, of course, there certainly are advantages to having kind of pre-baked apps, but I think that one thing I would add is that there's a lot of variety with different backends and different approaches to authentication. And although we'd be able to create examples of some of those, they might not cover a user's actual flow. If we create something like that is already pre-baked, but it doesn't do what a user needs, then they are stuck having to sort of unwind it and customize it to their needs in a way that they might not be prepared to do if they're just looking at something which is already pre-configured. Whereas if they can go through the steps themselves, then they can learn how it works at the same time that they customize it to their individual backend or their individual requirements for their app. So I think that it certainly makes a lot of sense to have such example apps, and it's something that I think that we very likely will have in the future. But there are some downsides to it as well.
Yeah. And I see John. So John added in the chat, take the authentication tutorials that are already available and make them also into sample app. So that's, again, I'm going to reiterate, yes, that's a good idea. And it might, in your case, be helpful because particularly if you've gone through a tutorial, you understand what's happening. But if you just turn that into an app, people might not understand the concept of even the action stack that we just demonstrated earlier. So if you don't understand the concept of action stack, even though you might technically be further along in your app, I think you're going to miss a critical piece of knowledge in order to use a Draftbit builder. So that's what we want to be conscious of. And then John said, no, I added, but you're ignoring my follow-up as expected. So I'm going to try to not take that the wrong way. And I'm not sure what you're referring to that you added. So feel free to phrase that again for us to read. And to answer your second question, yes, we do read the chat here as well as the question. All right, moving on to the next question. Brian asks, is there any sort of version history? I find that I'll break something and want to go back to the way things were an hour ago, for example. So the quick answer is that we don't have a version history per se, at least not the way I think you're thinking of. We have a couple of things though to help you out in that direction. But I would start by saying that this too is a great idea. Like I think most software tools nowadays offer this kind of functionality. Companies and platforms that are more advanced, like not more advanced, but more further along than us in other markets. So it's definitely a good practice and something we're gonna look into at some point. It's a little early for us in the state of our product to really invest a lot of time into that just yet, but it's a good idea, and we care about that, and we'll look into it. The things you can do right now, you can always, like, if you delete, I guess people can still see my screen. If you delete stuff by mistake, like I just removed that text component, you have a way to go back into your deleted components and restore them. So you have a way to do kind of the back and forth. So if you don't care about something, just remove it. Maybe look at your screen. It was not necessarily the intended way to use it, but if you want to like toggle things on and off just to see what if I do this, kind of delete it, look at it, and then restore it, and now it's back. So feel free to use that for that use case as well. For me, more, I doubt that's what you are looking for, but for people who are more interested about version history from a code point of view, we do integrate with GitHub. So you have a way to commit all your changes anytime you want to GitHub. And so I'm personally have been using that to like keep track. So every few hours, I'll just push my commit to GitHub. And then you end up doing this great thing that you do as a software engineer, which is essentially commit your code. And then you got your whole like version history. So the issue is we don't have a way to sync things back into Draftbit. So if you're like, okay, that thing I committed 2 hours ago, I want that version back. This kind of two-way sync we don't provide just yet, but that is a kind of a holy grail, honestly, of like being able to do a back and forth between code and design like that. So that's going to take us a while because it's very challenging, but know that you can at least commit stuff to GitHub for now.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we've talked about a lot. The ability to kind of save and restore at a certain point, and there's some technical reasons why it's quite challenging to do that the way that things are currently. But that we certainly have discussed ways that we would be able to implement that, and some other kind of related features. So they're definitely on the radar for the future. But unfortunately, it's just quite difficult to do that at a sort of with the degree of robustness that we'd like to have for that kind of a feature right now.
Yeah.
But one thing just to note, like one thing you can do is if you you have a screen, for example, that does something, has a piece of functionality that you like, and you don't want to lose it, you can duplicate that screen, and then start working on the duplicate, or continue working on the one that you had duplicated, and be able to switch back to the screen that you had before. Where either by deleting the copy or deleting the original, depending on which one is the one that you want to keep. So there's a way around it. It doesn't cover every aspect of your app. If you want to like save your REST API endpoints or custom functions or something like that, there's limitations on that approach, but that is a way to go about it. If you have a screen that you like, but you want to experiment with something, then I would recommend making a copy and experiment on the copy.
Yeah, that is actually, that's a great addition. And I tried to illustrate it while you were talking about it. So this is a little like duplicate feature on the right hand side of the screen. So feel free to use that. Cool. All right. Next question. Another question from Brian. I'm trying to filter a list by each record's status, but I haven't been able to. I'm using Airtable for the backend. I've tried using the filter by formula, but couldn't make it work. I'm trying to filter a list by each record status. All right, let's try to take that step by step. So I have an Airtable. I'm gonna put status. I'm gonna get rid of all that stuff. Okay, so I'm assuming. Oh, that's the new interfaces from Airtable that they released like yesterday or the day before. Brand new. Anyway, I haven't seen that yet. Anyway, so you have a status. I'm assuming your status is a single select. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we're gonna do task 1, task 2. And by the way, Alan, let me know if I'm going in the wrong direction with this.
So far, so good.
Okay. So we're gonna have a couple of statuses. Oh, I'm gonna remove this like empty one to avoid any. Oh, it doesn't show up here. Anyway, all right. So we got statuses, and I'm assuming. All right. So let's do the very first step. I'm gonna go to Draftbit and show that list. First step. So let me do create a new app status. I'm gonna make it a blank app. Now, while all that thing load, I'm gonna do one thing. I'm gonna go and add. So in Airtable, in order to connect Airtable to Draftbit, you need to provide us the API key. So if you go to the API documentation, you'll see there's when you see example of the call we're gonna set up in Draftbit to talk to Airtable, you have to provide it that API key in the authorization header. And that goes, that's typically what you would save as a global variable in Draftbit and then use that global variable into your endpoint. So because I don't want to share my API key on the screen, I'm going to take 1 second to set my app, to set that global variable in my app in a way that hopefully you guys cannot see, just for, privacy reason. Okay, you can now just see the community site, which is great. All right, so I'm going to just narrate what I'm doing. I'm going to the project setting, app variable. I'm going to call it Airtable authorization header, and I'm going to copy the thing that I'm getting from Airtable. All right, I'm going to add it, save it. All right, so now it's there. I can bring that back. All right, so first thing, what we're going to want to do is a fetch. We want to fetch all the result from that Airtable. So it's a fetch component. As same thing as before, I haven't set up any service. So I'm going to have to create a service. I'm going to create Airtable. And if I look at I'm going to bring back my documentation here quick. This is my documentation. This is my like a base URL. It is. And for the header, I'm going to add that authorization header with, that's the global label I just created that you guys could not see. So now I have a service. I want an endpoint that's just on my tasks. Actually, we're going to, task that'll be convenient. Now I'm going to refresh that, and now it's called task. Perfect. I'm going to get it. There we go. The header that I set up is already here. So now I should be getting all my results. And here it is. So I have 3, task 1, task 2, task 3 with my status. I'm going to save that. Now I can, in my fetch, use it. And then, so I'm essentially getting all those records. So now I need to iterate through them. So I need a list component. I'm going to give it the specific thing I want to iterate over, which is the list of records. And now inside nested in that list, I'm essentially doing, I'm getting one task at a time. So I'm just going to display it on the page, on the screen, so you can see what it looks like. You see I already have 3 because there's 3 records. This is just the name of the task. I'm going to map it to I'm going to even do a better job than that. I'm going to rename those components. It's a good habit. So this is all my tasks. This is just one task I'm iterating over. And now when I map my thing, I can see all my tasks, variable available, and I'm going to map it to name. So now I have task 1, task 2, task 3. All right, this is just setting the thing up. So the real question is, how do I filter by status? I'm debating, do you want that to be dynamic? Like the user can say, I have a button or whatever UI component to say, I want all my to-do, all my in progress, or do you want to always have that fetch return just the to-do? Because that would be a slightly different direction. Let's give Brian a minute to answer that question if he's still around. We have a separate page per status. Okay, so in this case, this is essentially going to be my to-do page, my to-do screen, right? So I'm going to make sure that that fetch is only returning the to-do one. All right, so for that, I need to edit my endpoint a little bit. I'm going to do task, just the to-dos. All right, this is where it's getting fun. And this is less of a Draftbit thing and more of an Airtable thing. But how do you filter through your records in Airtable? So you can look at the doc, list all my records. There is this filter by formula thing that you mentioned, Brian. And this is, it's a little, honestly, every time it takes me a little bit of like brain power to figure out how the filter by formula really works in Airtable. I don't find it the most intuitive, but it's pretty powerful, so can't complain there. But essentially, it's going to be a query parameter that says filter by formula, and it looks something like status equal to do. Was it just one word? Okay. This is a little naive, but let's see if that works. Well, the naive approach worked. So it's good to be naive. I said it's naive because I sometimes wonder if I have to like URL encode the query parameter in Draftbit or not. So you can just put it as is, and we'll. Alan, correct me if I'm wrong. Does that imply that we're doing all the URL encoding behind the scene?
Yeah, we do. We call it encode URI component or whatever that function is. So you should be able to put anything in that URL, even if it's not a allowed character, and it'll get encoded.
Excellent. So that's it. We're getting our to-do. So now if I save this, now I'm only getting and I should actually do a better job at displaying it. This is the name and this is the status. Status. And here it is. So now all my to-do stuff. And obviously it works with in progress and the other one the same way. Brian asked a follow-up question. Also looking to filter records where status is null, has not been set. All right, let's find out. So let's do a task 4 where we don't set it. So one issue, I'm going to preemptively mention it with Airtable, is that let me move that up just to make sure. If some of the fields are null or false, which is that part is a little tricky, sometimes it's not even returned at all, which makes it difficult. So here's kind of an example. Status is not defined, but it's not even being returned as like null or undefined or whatever you would expect. It's just not there entirely. So that makes things a little bit tricky, but let's see if we can still figure it out. So I'm going to create a second endpoint. We're going to call it null. And it's essentially the same endpoint, filter by formula, where status That's the part I'm not exactly sure we're gonna do. Let's just try that. Let's see. Well, yeah, I was not expecting that to work on the first try, to be honest. But all right, so you can check that status is empty, I guess. Yeah, I'm wondering, do you think it works with like anything? Can I do a bunch of, no, this doesn't work. Undefined? I don't know. I'm just playing around now. No. So yeah, I guess here's your solution.
There it is.
Yeah, so you'll have just actually, I'm going to illustrate the duplicate screen. So I'm going to duplicate the screen to do just the null stuff, and I'm going to change the endpoint to use the null one, and then this should, oh, that's still records, and this, and so I'm seeing the task 4, which is the right one. Unfortunately, it's not returning anything, so that's why my status is empty. But that makes sense. That's what I wanted, right?
One other thing, just to throw it out there in case people don't know, is that you can make the status itself in the URI of your endpoint. You can make that a variable, and then you can use, rather than having two separate endpoints, you can have the same endpoint and use a parameter to change, between to do, done, or in progress.
You're right. Let's do that. It's fun. Ask filter by formula. Oh. Formula. And I see you work with those text input, not resetting at the very end. Is that something? Yeah, that's really cool. All right. Status equal. And so what you were saying, instead of putting it statically here, I can do something like status. And now this is a variable that I can even set to, what was the third one? In progress.
Progress. I don't know if you need to wrap that in quotes or not.
Yeah, I think you're right. I need this, I believe. Yeah, you can see what it renders here. Okay, sweet. My both in progress. Because now we can do cool stuff like, let me duplicate this. I'm just going to do tasks. So this, I'm going to use this one. So now I have this query parameter here that I can set to anything I want. What was the, no, I guess I can still set it to in progress. Ooh. In progress. Okay, and now I'm seeing all my in progress results. Sweet. That was a great addition. Thank you, Alan. All right, I think we're done answering this one. Brian, I hope that was helpful. Moving on.
One other thing just to note, even though it's a little bit different than what was asked, is you can also return all of the status or all of the to-dos, for example, and then filter at your in your app using like a transformation like on the list data. So if your API doesn't support filtering, for example, and you want to do something similar, then you could add a transformation in your list to, like with a custom function, for example, which says, return the objects where the status equals to do or status equals done.
Oh, yeah. Should we try that? Do that quick?
Sure.
So it will be, I'm going to rename this one task status, and just rewrite it so I can save it. Okay, and I'm going to create another one called task, and this one is just going to, so we're not doing any filtering, we're returning everything, right? That's what you're suggesting. Okay. Just make sure my name aligns. So doesn't really matter. And then this one is my task one I just created. So here I'm gonna use this new endpoint that returns everything, and you're saying when I'm giving it to the list, I can do the filtering at that level, right?
Right. Right, with a
So,
custom function, for example.
so it would be like return just the to-do one, for example.
Sure.
So that would be my list. And it would be, how do you go about doing this?
You could do like return list.filter, and then give it some name like I don't know, record arrow record dot status equals to do, for example.
Is it uppercase? That does matter, right? Equal like this.
For example, yes, I think that would work.
All right. So that would be return to do. Okay, let's try that. So return to do. So right now I can see on the screen I'm showing all of them: in progress, to do, in progress, and nothing. So if I run it through that filter, no, I'm not returning anything.
We're not seeing anything. That is interesting. What we got here? This dot filter record stats. Oh, maybe triple equals instead of double equals. Bit of subtlety, but no.
Could it be that I think it's field, right? I would have to do records dot fields dot status. No.
Oh, okay. I'm not super familiar with the object structure, but
yeah, it's always a little tricky coming from Airtable. Let's try that. Okay, great.
Oh, there we go.
That works. So now we've done the filtering at the list component level. That's pretty cool. I don't think I've ever done that at the list level. That's a good idea. All right.
Yeah, another way to do it.
Another way to filter. Sweet. Awesome. All right. What time is it? 51. Okay, we've got a few more minutes. I'm going to move on to the next question. Question from Steve, our good friend Steve, who was part of the initial Draftbit Spring cohort, made a great app, journaling app. So the question is, I'm trying to build a fab and have followed a guide in the forums, but I'm running into an issue where the scroll view has some fetch list item in, and they each become scrollable within that scroll view. Let me try to parse that.
So is the issue here, and like that we have the scrolling is off. Basically, you have some things that are scrollable that you don't want to be scrollable. Just to clarify, I can try and screen share easier.
Yes, let's try to. I can bring you up, Steve. Compress the whole screen and makes each list scrollable to fit the screen. It compresses the whole screen. All right, I'm going to bring it up and let's do a little screencast. Let's try to do that. I say that respectfully, but fairly quick because we want to make sure we cover this question as well. So I'm going to invite you, and if you can share your screen maybe quickly, we can try to unblock you. And I'm going to unshare my screen. Hey, Steve.
Hey, how you doing? Good to see you guys. I'll try and keep this as short as possible.
Good.
Share screen. Here we go. Billion tabs, is it? So, can you guys see that?
Yep.
Awesome. So this is the setup. It's got a scroll view with all the content in it, and this fab is a separate item, absolutely positioned. So rather than the whole scroll view scrolling, each separate list becomes scrollable to kind of press
it. Wait, can you expand can you make your screen any bigger, maybe by like doing the command plus thing so we can see it?
Is that any better?
No, because you're not. Can you do the command plus? Is that what you tried? The zoom in. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. And can you expand what's in your scroll view components? So I would say, first off, do you need a scroll view at the top level, or can you just make your screen scrollable?
Maybe just the guide that I followed, it the way that it seemed to function was you put everything into a scroll view and then turn scrolling off on the screen.
Oh, specifically for the fab? That was the
Yeah.
motivation. Okay. Oh yeah, otherwise the fab is going to be at the bottom. But you're saying the scrolling only works per specific section?
Yeah, so like each of these is a separate list, and that becomes scrollable rather than, the whole screen.
I wonder if there's a way to turn off scrolling on lists themselves, so that they're not scrollable and they just fit the content. I'm not actually sure how to do that if we can. I don't have a great answer for this one. I see what the problem is, but I'm not sure what the solution is.
That's right. If it's not a super quick one, should we leave it? I can stick it into the forums, just so it doesn't take all the rest of the time up.
Well, sure. Before we do that, when you say you know what the problem is, do you mean from like just a visual point of view, or do you have more of an understanding of what's going on in the scene? Because I don't.
Well, from what I can tell, the issue is that rather than the list, he has two lists, one under daily journaling and one under suggested exercises, and each of those have their own scrolling behavior. And it seems like what's desired is just to have them be a sort of static height, not to scroll up or down, and just have the scrolling be at the level of the screen.
What are the two lists? Can you? The one is daily. Which one have scrolling?
So okay. That one is this list here.
Yeah. Could it be that we've set up the flex property on that one, and so it's just using the available space it has? Yeah. What if you go to style, like in that little tab?
Here, sorry.
Yeah, if you try to remove, I think there might be a slight delay with the screen, but if you try to remove the flex here, click on the yellow dot just to like reset it to essentially auto. Does that help at all?
No, it's still scrolling.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, it might be something I need to like take a look at your specific app.
It might be. I mean, I don't know if I could just come up with a solution right here, but maybe just something like wrapping it with a view that has a fixed height, so that it's large enough that it doesn't overflow. Because it looks like maybe part of the issue is that the space that it's given to render those three elements is not enough. Which I'm not totally sure why it wouldn't be giving it enough. But maybe if it were wrapped in a view, and then you just set the height on that so that it was like big enough that it had enough space, then it wouldn't need to scroll.
Okay,
that's maybe a workaround.
The only thing is the amount of items in that list is kind of flexible.
Yeah. Well, that is a challenge. Right. Yeah. I mean, off the top of my head, I don't have a great answer, unfortunately.
That's all right. I'll have a bit of a play with it, and then I'll drop something in the forums with some more details and see what we can come up with.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and I'm not as familiar with I don't use the fab component a ton, but I'm wondering if there's another way. I know you said in the forum it recommends to do the scroll view just so the fabs stick at the bottom. I'm wondering if there's another way to not do the scroll view, use the screen scrollable, and have the fab being like absolutely positioned. But that part I don't know if it's quite doable. So yeah. Anyway, let's do what you just said. Like put in the forum, and we'll take a look specifically at your app.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. So I see I'm going to kick you out, but thanks for joining us.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. So let's see if we have any other question. I'm going to mark this one as done. Another question from John. Are we not able to save objects and arrays into a global? I assume it's a global variable. I'm getting an error when saving a full authentication response to a global unless I stringify it, which makes it harder to access the children in the future. Do you have an answer for that, Alan?
Well, we should be able to store anything which can be rendered into JSON in a global variable. But I will say that we don't store the type information for that. So whether you stringify it yourself and parse it somewhere else, or you store it directly into a global variable, which again, I think you should be able to do, but there could be an issue there. But either way, it won't keep track of what the structure of that object is. So if you want to like store some complex object in a global variable, you can, but you have to manually pull the information back out of it when you want to access it.
So
red screen of death when I store it. I wonder if there's is it complaining about something cannot be rendered into JSON? Sometimes, like if you have objects that are not just pure data, instead they like the functions or some kind of JavaScript object, then you'll get an error trying to stringify it. But if it's just like a regular old JSON blob, you should be able to store it in a global variable.
And I was actually thinking here, if I can share my screen again, we did that earlier, right? So when we did that example, the date one,
yeah,
we did an API request. So we got a response here, and that's a JSON example data response, and we saved it directly to the global variable. So that part works, at least in the context of this JSON. So maybe there's something else going with the JSON being returned, to Alan's point, like maybe there is some complexity there. Out of curiosity, so let's say I have now my whole JSON, like we've seen here. How do I go about extracting something specific in there? So I can think of a way of like, you can first extract it here before you save it. That would be kind of my like initial instinct, is to, when I get the response, do like extract key, pick specifically what I'm interested in for the future, and save that into the global variable. But let's say, so that's definitely doable, but let's say you save the entire object. How do you go then about showing just one part of it? Will you do it through a custom function, or can you think of a different way to do it, Alan?
A custom function or extract key. If you want to just pull a particular key out, you could do extract key when you save it, or you can do extract key when you display it.
How do you do extract key when you display it?
Oh, wait. I think I might have been too cavalier on that one, because now that I think about it, extract key is an action. It's not a transformation. So yes, I do think you'd have to do a custom function for that.
Got it. So yeah, you do one of those as we did before. Oops, that's the wrong action. But yeah, so you will create your custom function like we did for the get now date, and just kind of traverse your JSON and pick the right thing and return that. Okay, yeah, that seems cool. Cool. So hopefully that's doable. John followed up with getting the red screen of death when I store it. No problem to stringify. The issue is when I don't stringify. Investigate further after the show. Yeah, feel free to try to see what your JSON looks like, just to make sure there might be something going on there. So that would be a good thing to investigate. All right, and we are doing amazing on time because we just finished all the questions and we are right at the 1 hour mark. We didn't have time to go in the community forum, unfortunately, but we'll take another look at that asynchronously. So if you have any further question, put them in the ask for help section of our community.draftbit.com website, and we'll take a look at it over the next few days. That's essentially it. We did it. Was that your first? I know you have been on the live stream before, but was it for office hour? Was it your first office hour, Alan?
I think there might have been one other a while back, but
Nice.
yeah, I mean, essentially, let's just say it is.
Well, it
It's
was great.
Thursday office hours anyway.
Exactly. Well, it was great to have you. Really appreciate you taking the time to answer those questions. And we'll see everybody else on Tuesday. So next Tuesday is going to be Tim, maybe Brian, maybe Raul doing another office hours. So feel free to join then. It's all, one more thing I mentioned, it's all available if you go to chromecast.io/Draftbit. I'm going to share it in the chat here. There is a list of all our upcoming office hours, and you can register there in advance. That's it. See you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.